You guys know me, right? So I don't have to introduce myself. How'd we do with antioxidants? Did you find yourself adding in, like, just even a cup of berries gets it? I'm like, wow, that's easy. I can do that. Yeah. Okay. So the talk is called Managing Gene Expression. So we'll get into that a little bit at the end of this program. But there's been a lot of advances in gene therapy and understanding how genes turn on and turn off. And there's even been more research than when this was published in 22. So I went back and got some newer stuff, so we'll be talking about that too. And our promise for tonight, I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generations of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. There you go. Okay. So our learning objectives tonight, we're going to talk about leptin. It's a very important hormone. We're going to talk about circadian rhythm, and then we're going to get into epigenetics, or how genes turn on and off. Again, this program is educational. Don't do any changes without talking to your doctor, right? Okay, good. We're there. So Karen is responsible for developing this program. So I was excited to share her story, and she started out with triglycerides. Does everyone know what that is? It's one of the fats that we can measure in our blood, and they were not off the charts. I certainly have seen higher, but certainly at a point where she was at risk for pancreatitis. So she was really high on her triglycerides. Her cholesterol was a little high, and her weight was maybe a little bit more than she should have been. And at the end of her journey, she looked like this, and her triglycerides went down to 149, and cholesterol under 200, yep, and her weight, she lost 50 pounds. So really, I love sharing these stories because it's like, oh, I look like her, and I can look like her after I've made some effort, right? It is a little bit of effort, but anyway, so she was so excited about her journey that she created this program. So, great job. Okay. Yeah. I was like, wow. So, leptin resistance. They describe leptin as a master hormone. It is a big hormone, and it was only discovered very recently in the late 1990s. So, you know, we still don't know everything that it does, but if you have insulin resistance and you're a little overweight, you probably also have leptin resistance. So that's why leptin is important. So I kind of changed this. It's a terrible slide. I'm sorry. It was already really busy, and I added 2 more things to what leptin does. So it affects the thyroid, it interacts with melatonin, fertility, adrenal glands, growth hormone, insulin, glucagon, amylin. Those are all those little hormones that come out of the pancreas. The immune system, because leptin is pro-inflammatory, so that's not a good thing. And it controls gastric emptying. That was new. I didn't know that until I did my research. I was like, wow, it does a lot. So the main thing that it does is it controls hunger. It is excreted by the fat cells. So if you have more fat cells, you will have more leptin, and leptin suppresses hunger, and also kind of increases your metabolic rate or keeps your metabolic rate going at a normal pace. If you have less fat cells, it will have less leptin, and less leptin makes you hungry and slows your metabolism. Okay, that's what leptin does. Now the problem is with leptin, and those of us who might have insulin resistance also, is that we can become resistant to leptin. Ugh, how normal. So normally, oh, I forgot I had these slides. Normal leptin, you have adequate fat stores, you have a balanced metabolism, and you have a normal appetite. When you are starving and you actually are losing fat, then the body feels that you have inadequate fat stores. It slows the metabolism down, thank you, and increases your appetite. It is designed to help us not be starving. It's our starvation defense mechanism, right? So that's what leptin does. But the problem is we can develop leptin resistance where the message to the brain gets interrupted. So we might have lots of leptin circulating because we have lots of fat cells that are delivering the leptin, but our brain isn't getting that signal. So you still have increased appetite and slow metabolic rate. How annoying is that? All right, so some causes of leptin resistance. There are some genetic mutations, very, very rare, but I put that one in there because we actually had a patient that had one of these, and I was like, oh, wow, cool. But excessive calorie consumption and obesity, and then elevated leptin levels. So if you have a lot of fat, you're going to have a lot of leptin. So this extra leptin actually causes leptin resistance. Inflammation also causes leptin resistance. Those elevated triglycerides cause leptin resistance. And then my last one, inadequate time between meals. We'll get to that and what I've found. Also, high leptin levels have been associated with fatty liver disease. So if you have that, you may also have leptin resistance, right? Depression has also been associated with high leptin levels. That was interesting to me. Okay. So now your question will be, how can we reverse it, right? We've been talking about how to reverse insulin resistance. So we think we can reverse the leptin resistance. So the previous slide was really very targeted to meals, which meals are very important, but I feel there's some other things that we also need to attend to, right? So definitely getting the right calories in to get to your healthy weight. This was interesting. Increasing your omega-3s. So we talked about that last week, right, with our antioxidants. Omega-3s, if you can increase those, that will help with leptin resistance. So remember, omega-3s are all your seeds, right? Chia seeds, walnuts, flax seeds, those are good sources. Really super sources, though, are tuna, salmon, and mackerel, right, if you can get those in. And then limiting added sugars. And I think the previous slide just talked about fructose, but let me tell you, sucrose is also a bad guy for leptin resistance. They're both not good. So limiting your added sugars, decreasing your triglycerides, which might come if you decrease carbohydrates, that could help. But generally, you might, if you're as high as she was, you would want to be on a medication to lower those triglycerides until they get out of the danger zone, right? Increasing fiber, right? We know that. Increasing protein And suggestions are somewhere between 10 and 20%, but if you can get up to 20% of your calories to be protein, that really helps with decreasing leptin resistance. We have a question.
I have a question about the sugar. So just regular table sugar, that's fructose?
That is sucrose. Regular table sugar, she asked, what is that? And that is sucrose. So yeah?
So I use coconut sugar sometimes.
Uh-huh.
Date sugar, is that better than?
That has not been studied, right? So more to follow. I know. Because they claim that it doesn't spike your glucose as much. I think the main goal with those added sugars is looking at your labels and not using foods that have that added sugar in it, right? If you're doing cooking at home and you're putting in something to make it sweet, I think those are okay, and they should be, on a limited basis, right?
Agave, is that supposed to be?
I know, like agave and, and honey and monk fruit and even I don't think stevia is going to be in that same category, but yeah, those are all, good sweeteners. They are, because you use less of them, right, to get the sweetness that you need. Yeah. Okay, processed foods. This is really interesting, and it's off topic for leptin resistance, but I want to tell you the study that came out, it's probably been a year ago. They took people in a very controlled way. They brought them into a facility and they fed them. One group got the same amount of calories, the same amount of fat, the same amount of protein, the same amount of carbohydrates in processed foods. The other group got the same amounts in whole foods. Do y'all know what happened? The guys with the processed foods gained weight, same amount of calories. The guys with the whole foods lost weight. Then they swapped groups and the same thing happened. So processed foods, even though the calories might be less, there's something about them that is not helpful to our gut. And that is, we're learning more and more about that. But if you can avoid those processed foods, that can decrease inflammation. I'm going to talk about time-restricted eating, but that is one of the things that does help to reverse leptin resistance. And then adequate sleep and exercise. Yeah, there's nothing else. The other suggestions that they had, I left them in there, 5 to 6 hours between meals, no snacking, and what does the other one say? No late night eating. Yeah, so those are all ways of restricting calories. So they aren't going to help with leptin resistance, but they might help with hunger. And the late night snacking could contribute to that fasting time, that extra fasting time. So if we can avoid that, I do agree with that. Yeah. Some people may need to snack, so I'm not totally, that might not be for everybody, but for some people, like my mom, for instance, she says that when she snacks, it makes her more hungry. For me, if I don't snack, I get ridiculously hungry, and then I overeat at my next meal. So everybody's kind of different in where they're at, so, okay. Oh, so that's all I have on leptin resistance. How are we doing? Oh, we're doing okay. All right. Circadian rhythms. I want to talk a little bit about that. It's our internal biological clock. And when it gets disrupted, it makes a mess of things. So I'm not going to go too deeply into the science, but I wanted to add a little bit more than what they talked about in this program. They just talked about the feeding schedule, which is important. But our circadian rhythm does respond to light-dark directly. So when you take in light in your eye, it sends a signal directly to the main circadian rhythm master in the hypothalamus, okay? So paying attention to light dark is really important. Shift workers have to respect that and try and work with that. And there's no getting around it. Their circadian rhythms are disrupted. But so those circadian rhythms control our wake-sleep patterns, when we should eat and when we should fast. This is a way to get back our circadian rhythms. Time-restricted eating, that means only eating in an 8 to 12 hour period. So having at least a 12-hour fasting time really is important. And then eating most of your calories early in the day can be very helpful with weight loss versus eating late. Your glucose tolerance tends to be better in the morning, but not for everybody. So I'm gonna kind of back off on that. For some people, glucose tolerance is not good in the morning, especially my teenagers, for instance. Okay, and then when you should be active and when you should be resting, these are all circadian rhythms. Do you know your muscle cells have a circadian rhythm? It's crazy. Blood pressure should go down at night. So if you're on blood pressure medication, it is probably, talk with your doctor, a good idea to have at least one of those blood pressure medications at night to help lower your blood pressure at night, because that's part of your circadian rhythm. Your temperature goes down at night, all sorts of things. Blood sugar goes down, glucagon goes down, your GLP-1, which is a hormone that's emitted when you eat, and your insulin levels. All of those are down when you're sleeping. Okay, so on circadian rhythms, disruption causes an impairment of our beta cells. Those are the cells that produce insulin, so you have less insulin available when your circadian rhythm is disrupted. It also reduces how well your insulin works or your insulin sensitivity. So insulin is less effective. So how can we repair our circadian rhythm once it's off? Well, one is definitely light therapy. Getting bright light in the morning is really helpful in returning your circadian rhythm to where it should be. It can help reset it. Feeding behavior, again, I mentioned that time-restricted eating, so trying to have at least 12 hours of no eating at all, at least 12 hours, really, really helps. And if you can advance that to like 16 hours, that's even better, right? But that's for me, it's impossible, okay? Yeah, to be fasting that long, I get anxious and irritable. So I've been told, though, that if you hang with it, that it gets better. I'm just not there yet. So, but I do generally get a 12-hour fast in every night, for sure, yeah. And then calorie restriction. This was so interesting. So calorie restriction can actually help get your circadian rhythm back in and get that leptin resistance down, right? So exercise improves insulin resistance. So this is where, you know, remember those big spikes of glucose that happen after the meals? One way that you can kind of temper that is with movement after the meal. That's why this program is so good with movement after the meal. I think when we're giving our suggestions, we should be like moving, right? Because the muscle cell, when it's contracted, it activates, the GLUT4 transporters activate just with a contraction of the muscle cell. I don't need insulin to move sugar from the bloodstream into that muscle cell. Hence, we should all be doing strength training to keep as much muscle mass as we can, right? At least 2 to 3 days a week is the recommendation, right? And we should move after a meal rather than just sit and watch television. I know, I do it, but that's what we should do. And eating early in the morning. Okay. I did leave this one in because it's the kind of the main premise of this program, and I didn't want to leave that out. What's wrong with this breakfast, though? What's missing in this breakfast? Anybody see that? Exactly. Somebody said protein. Exactly. You've got to have protein with your morning meal, right? So eating late can decrease your resting energy expenditure, right? Because when you eat earlier, it takes a little bit more energy to move that food along than when you eat late. It takes less energy, so you actually burn more calories if you eat more of your calories in the morning or early in the day, depending on when you wake up. And then decreased glucose tolerance. We talked about that. So for those of you who may sleep in, you might not consider your first meal breakfast, but I consider skipping the first meal of the day can impair some fasting lipids and decrease your insulin sensitivity and cause weight gain. It has been shown that people who eat breakfast do tend to have an easier time losing weight. They tend to be less hungry throughout the day. So thinking about that, I know me personally, I pretty much have to eat breakfast within an hour or two of waking. Otherwise, I'm really, really hungry. Yeah. So I do encourage you to eat breakfast, for sure. Okay. Any questions so far? We're doing good. Yeah? You guys are all agreeing? What? Yeah? Okay. All right. Epigenetics. So epigenetics looks at how genes turn on and off. So these are two identical twins. One has cancer, the other's cancer-free. One is lean, the other is obese. One has diabetes and the other does not have diabetes. So how does that happen? They're identical twins. They have the exact same genes as each other. So something other than the genes has changed and made them susceptible to disease. So the word epigenetics just means the study of factors that affect how genes work. So independent of the genes themselves. The genes stay the same. So I always say that, I used to say, the genes that you were born with are not the genes that you have now, but they are. It's just, some might not be turned on, and some might be turned on. So it's so interesting. And it is quite a new science. Time magazine, I guess, said something about it in 2010. But the research is clear. I included this one from yours because this is my alma mater, and I'm like, for sure this was a good study. We know, so agouti mice are these blonde mice that become very quickly obese and die of cancer. So that's that. So it's fun to study these mice because they have really bad genes. What they did was to feed the mother mice, they fed them special nutritional supplements. And guess what happened? That offspring that's right next to her, that's dark brown, is normal. They lived a normal life. They did not develop cancer. No diabetes. Oh, that's the other thing. The agouti mouse is a really good one to study diabetes. And they lived a long life. They didn't die early. We all know that when we're pregnant, we need to take, special precautions and eat all the right things and don't drink any wrong things, So this is just proof that the DNA, though, the genes are still the same in this little brown mouse, but something didn't get turned on. The disease-producing genes are not turned on. Such a cool thing, right?
So when it was fed the special diet, did it not give birth to any yellow?
No,
No yellow?
no yellow. All dark brown. Yep, all dark brown, healthy mice.
Yeah, that's
I have no idea. I know. I didn't look into that. I don't know. Let's look at it. But the one thing that they felt was changed was that the other diet that they had usually been fed was toxic to the mom, And so that's how that agouti gene became expressed. And it turned off when, not for the mother, but for her offspring. So those two mice had exactly the same genes. They can look at those and they have the exact same DNA, but something turned off that agouti gene. Okay. So the other one that I wanted to share with you is the prostate cancer study. It is a little old, but gosh, it's so remarkable, really. Dr. Ornish took 30 men who had prostate cancer, who had opted out of conventional treatment. They just didn't want to do that. And he put them into a 3-month, just 3 months, of a lifestyle program. It was a plant-based diet, moderate exercise, stress management. Did we talk about that last night? Or last week? Yeah. That is a really important piece. And then weekly support group. So their diet the plant-based diet was low fat. It was fairly low protein and plant-based, obviously. And then they had exercise and meditation. And their goal was to see if these lifestyle changes did anything to change the outcome. And the results were really astounding. Of course, they lost weight. Their blood pressure was lower, their lower cholesterol, and their tumors shrank. Crazy. So the Human Genome Project, just so you know, it's still ongoing, but we know that there are disease-causing genes and disease-preventing genes. And in this prostate cancer study, they found before they did this lifestyle change, 453 genes that promote disease were active, and then inactive were all of the disease-preventing genes that we knew about at that time. This was 2008, okay? More to come. After the study, this was phenomenal, I thought. Like every single one of those disease-preventing genes was turned off. That's crazy, but it happened. And the disease-preventing genes, every single one of them was turned on. Like, that's just incredible, right? It's just incredible. So we're not here today to just prevent diabetes. I think we're here today to prevent cancer, stroke, heart attack, everything else, right? Okay. Let's see if I had anything to say. But anyway, so the lifestyle, they turned off the bad genes and turned on the good genes. And gives us all hope for battling lots of things that are out there, right? So the basis for epigenetics is modifying that gene expression. It doesn't change the DNA, right? And it will occur within your lifetime, and it's preserved as the cells divide. So, and it might be passed on to our offspring, depends on where we are. They had this ridiculous slide, so I'm not going to go into it. I just want you to know that there is now one more way that we now know that genes turn on and off. She's fine, by the way. Sometimes things get caught in her throat and it just keeps going. So there's one more thing besides, they have the mechanisms up here on how DNA gets turned on and turned off. And one other one that's not on here is the non-coding RNA. So I think more to follow, more will come on this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time. But we're back to basics now, right? Charlotte Ling from Lund University, there's 800 genes that contribute to type 2 diabetes. I mean, the chances that you might have all of them are pretty slim, but the chances that you might have some of them are pretty strong. And they can be influenced in different ways through your diet, exercise, lifestyle. I'm going to add, relaxation. We've got to have that in there, and it's not really, I should have put it as a fourth point there, don't you think? Because it's really, really important. This is their slide. I kind of blew it up as much as I could, but it's all stuff you guys have already learned, right? To reverse diabetes. Eating whole foods, right? Avoiding the processed foods. A plant-based diet is really good. If you're not completely plant-based, maybe go meatless Mondays and have fish twice a week, maybe. But anyways, so high fiber. This recommends 50 grams. I'm like, whoa.
But it also said to work your way up.
Yeah, you're not going to start there. Is anybody keeping track of how much fiber they're taking in? I suggest you do. It could be an eye-opener for you. So just see how much you're taking in. The recommendation from the US government is 35 milligrams a day. But if you can increase it even more, what does fiber do for us? What?
Helps our digestion.
It helps your digestion, so it's gonna make things move through the colon like they're supposed to. Yep. What else does it do?
Lowers cholesterol.
It does lower cholesterol. Yep. What else?
Helps good bacteria.
Yes. That's kind of the main thing that I think is contributing to our health, is it helps the good bacteria survive. We know there is so much connection between our gut and the rest of our body, never mind the brain too. If we can get those bacteria working for us, but they can't survive without good fiber. Yep. In fact, the bad bacteria, this is really interesting, they love the processed foods. Do you know that? And we think that they actually will drive you to go for that food. I'm like, really? I don't know, but I'm not going to let them win. That's my thought. Okay. So eat your fiber first. That does help. It helps to fill you up, right? Eating slowly. My mom reminded me about this yesterday. I eat too fast. But eating slowly allows you to what? Enjoy the food. What? Yeah, and wasn't this food tonight wonderful? Our cooks they're all cleaned up and gone, but they were wonderful. Yeah. It helps you to also avoid overeating because you might sense that fullness before. Drinking plenty of water. So no snacking. Again, I think this is up to the individual. So everybody's an individual, and from what I've been reading on the latest research that's out there that's true. Everybody's an individual, but try no snacking and see how it goes. Yeah. And then allowing 5 to 6 hours between meals. But I think really the research looks at 4 to 6 hours between meals. And more importantly is that time-restricted eating, that you don't eat anything for 12 hours at a minimum. Yeah, that's really going to help with all of resetting your circadian rhythm and getting that leptin resistance under control. Avoiding all those inflammatory foods. Processed meats, right? I don't think any of us eat those anyways, but refined grains, so white flour versus whole wheat flour. I use whole wheat for almost everything, so there's no reason why you can't. And then sweets, I love how what happened to our dessert? Oh, did you guys like the dessert? That's pretty good, right? So, have dessert when you want to. And the last thing on here, diet soda. I am on I think nobody should be having diet soda. I know it's hard especially when you don't want to increase your blood sugars, right? And you just want something. I think it's okay occasionally, but I think it is not healthy for us. I think we all know that, and we just need to get it out of our lives. Certainly, the recommendation from the U.S. government is that no child should have any diet soda. Yeah, there you have it. All right. I'm going to close right now. These slides were ridiculous. I don't think you can read them. So I'm just going to say how diabetes progresses. We know it starts with insulin resistance, right? There's poor nutrients intake, calories come in, and it all goes and we gain weight, and it just makes a mess, right? And leptin resistance and everything. Okay. Am I finished? Almost. Yeah. And then, oh my God, it just gets ridiculous, right? But that's how diabetes starts. It's mainly with weight gain, right? Because that increases leptin resistance, and we're in a mess. And I guess their point is it starts with the bad diet, which it does, right? So moving to a good diet, and then how does it reverse? You have a good diet, and then that just kind of takes care of everything, right? And you start to lose weight, and everything disappears like magic. It does kind of, though, really. It's gonna, and if you can lose even 7 to 10% of your weight, you're gonna notice a change. So that's what I recommend. Do they have a recommendation of how much body weight to lose? But that's what in order to reverse diabetes, typically it's going to take at least 10% of your body weight. Yeah, there you go. All right, I'm done. Questions, though? Yes.
Not necessarily a question, but a statement. For instance, I don't see in any of those that information about losing weight, extremely losing weight when one becomes diabetic.
Losing weight?
Yeah, I lost 25 pounds in a period of 1 week, and not knowing that I know what.
Okay. Ooh, different type of diabetes, possibly.
And
She lost 25 pounds in 1 week. And then you developed diabetes?
I think it was already the
It could have been. It could have been.
and because of it, I lost the weight. I never recovered.
Right, right. And is this,
It's just my muscle mass.
yeah,
The weight.
that's terribly unhealthy. It can happen with type 1 diabetes, which is a completely different diabetes. It really is completely different. Even though the goal is to keep your blood sugars the same, but it's completely different. So, yeah, but yeah. That rapid weight loss can be from lots of bad things. So we don't want rapid weight loss. Really, I think 1 to 2 pounds a week is great. Yeah, yeah. So that's not good. No.
I didn't even know.
No. Ugh. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Question.
What's the bad thing about diet sodas?
So what's the bad thing about diet sodas? Well, probably the biggest one for children, it affects the growing brain. So we do not want children to have those non-nutritive sweeteners. There are some sodas out there now that are sweetened with stevia that probably would be okay, right? Maybe, I don't know. We haven't studied them yet. But the main thing with sweetener, with the diet sodas, is they change our gut microbiome. So it makes it very unhealthy for us. It is not a good health state. I think having a diet soda every once in a while is fine, right? It's just, I'm talking about people who have 2 or 3 a day. They really need to get that down. And even with our kids with type 1 diabetes, we recommend only 1 a day. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, we're gonna leave you to your coaches, I think, right? You wanna?
No, I want to do the survey next.